Good evening, everyone. This is Pete Eberly with the Colorado Renewable Energy Society Northern Chapter, NCRES, and I want to thank you all for attending tonight. Also want to thank, of course, Justin and Ian Skor with Sandbox Solar, who'll be doing the presentation here in a minute. But just a couple of quick housekeeping items. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation, which should only be about 30 to 45 minutes. So we'll have plenty of time to address those at the end. So just use the question function in your GoToWebinar control panel. And also, for all of those who haven't received the announcement yet, CRES, we have moved to a new website and membership platform called Flipcause. It's still at our same website, which is cres-energy.org. So if you were a previous member, in order to update your profile, we do need you to go to the site. There's actually a banner right underneath that talks about the new system. You can click on that button and you'll just need to re-sign up with us like you're signing up as a new membership in order to re-update your profile and to create the new profile really in Flipcause. We are offering a bonus if you're willing to do this sooner than later. If you use the coupon code FREE6, that will give you 6 months free and just $30 to get your annual renewal there. If you were previously set up on a PayPal subscription or a recurring subscription through authorize.net, there are instructions on there on how to basically turn off the old subscriptions and update to the new platform. And also, if there's any questions, the contact information is on the website. Again, that's cres-energy.org. And just a quick announcement on upcoming events. On June 10th, 7 p.m., our friends down at the Boulder chapter, BCRES, will be hosting Financing Resilience through Colorado CPACE. CPACE is Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's a really incredible tool for commercial building owners to do energy efficiency as well as renewable energy updates. And it's a really neat tool that's it's a couple years old, but it's still something that's growing within Colorado. So if you're interested in that, make sure to sign up. The link again can be found through the cres-energy.org website, but also keep an eye out for Meetup as well as our email newsletters. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Justin and he can give us an update on solar.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having us. And we want to thank you guys for joining us for the residential solar update presented by NCRES and Sandbox. We're going to roll through a couple slides to basically do an overview of solar energy and then get everybody excited for new technologies that are coming out and get everybody excited for the future of solar. Here's basically a webinar agenda. We're going to do a quick introductions and then the benefits of solar, PV 101, just a brief overview, get everybody familiar with technologies. And then we will dive into a little bit deeper of new technologies that are coming out and highlight some string inverters, power optimizers, micro inverters, and then new cutting edge technology that's right around the future. And then highlight some the new time of use rates and incentives for the future of solar in the next couple of years and local incentives throughout Colorado. And then specifically towards Sandbox Solar, we do some agrivoltaic research and we wanted to present to everybody some of the research that we've been putting together and just share that some of that side of the different technologies throughout solar beyond the residential sector. And then at the end of the presentation, of course, we'll go over the Q&A session. So if anybody would like to put some questions into the little marker on the side, we'll go over those at the end of the presentation. Thank you, guys. Brief background of Sandbox Solar. We've been in business for just over 5 years now, which is pretty excellent for the solar industry in general. Ian and our other co-founder, AJ, were both engineers that worked throughout the industry and decided to pair up and create Sandbox. So we are located in Fort Collins, but we service all of northern Colorado. So I know there's some customers that are outside of the Fort Collins region, but feel free to reach out to us if you guys have any questions regarding solar. We'd love to help out. We do everything from residential, small commercial, removal and reinstallation of existing projects, and then we are moving into the community solar sector as well. And then everything that we do is conducted in-house. Don't use any subcontractors. We do all the engineering, design, sales, everything in-house, of course. So very well versed in the solar industry. So let us know if you guys have any questions. We do provide free estimates and site visits to anybody that's interested. We'd be happy to take a look at your property, let you know the best options for your solar projects are. We do have a slide with our contact information at the very end of the presentation, so that will be presented to you guys, of course. We are available for you. Along the same lines of the agrivoltaic side, we do small business innovative research. We do have a grant going with CSU to do research for the agrivoltaics and plant growth as well. Sandbox's mission is to build community through customer relations and continue innovative research and education efforts, of course, and then create a sustainable climate for future generations. Just a brief highlight of Sandbox, where we've come and where we're heading in the future. In the last 5 years, we've installed over 800 kilowatts of solar PV between residential and small commercial. This equates to about 150,000 passenger vehicles driven in 1 year, as well as offsetting the electricity of roughly 160 homes. And with the removal and reinstallation sector, we've done about 220 of those projects as well. So 2019 was an exceptional year for Sandbox as a whole. We installed about 400 kW of new installation projects. This equates to about half that we've done over the entire lifetime of Sandbox. So 2019 ramped up pretty quickly for us. And then the goals in 2020, trying to expand that, of course, for the future and install about 600 kW of systems, and then continue the innovative research, of course. We have 3 fully functioning crews that are going at all times, and of course we are deemed essential construction at this point. So throughout COVID, we have been installing and pushing forward, still handing out quotes, free estimates, and doing site surveys while keeping everybody safe, of course. So 2020 has slowed us down a little bit, but we're definitely striving to revamp from this and continue on for the future. Several customers already know about the environmental benefits of solar PV, but I just wanted to highlight a couple just topics for you guys. Of course, the main purpose of solar PV is to reduce the carbon footprint and get down to 0 emissions, of course. And then, as everybody knows, solar PV is a renewable resource. It's very abundant and replenishable, so as long as the sun's shining, we can keep the electricity flowing. And by doing this, it's a low impact process on the environment and the earth in general compared to other fossil fuels such as nuclear power, natural gas, coal production. And then, of course, along those lines, we would like to reduce our dependence on the fossil fuels and the strain on the finite resources that we pull from the earth. The second most beneficial, of course, would be the economic impact of going solar. Along those lines, the main purpose is to reduce and eliminate monthly energy bills for your home, offset those bills and save thousands of dollars for the customer, of course. After eliminating the energy bills, we can add value to your home. If anybody's looking to sell the home, anything along those lines definitely adds value for you folks. It's kind of hard to put into exact figures depending on the home market and the region that you live in, of course, but it definitely adds value for you folks. Another economic benefit for you is to get around the increasing rates of the utility companies, of course. Typically in Northern Colorado over the last couple of years, we've seen about 3 to 6% utility rate increase. So solar kind of sets you in a locked in rate, and then you can get around those increasing rates as well. Improving solar technology has been improving quickly throughout the last 10 years or so. And while that's been increasing, the cost of solar has definitely been decreasing as well. And then another economic benefit that we've seen throughout the industry is a lot of transition towards electric vehicles and charging at home, which you can charge directly from the solar that's located on your roof or ground mount in your backyard. Another sector that we're breaking into and is becoming more readily accessible and popular throughout the United States is community solar. Basically, this offers an opportunity for virtual net metering throughout the community, to where you don't necessarily have to have solar PV located directly at your house, but you can buy shares into community solar. So there will be a large solar farm, and basically you can buy the share into that farm, and whatever electricity that they generate from those panels will be sent to the utility company, and your portion of the share will generate basically a credit that will be credited to your monthly utility bill as well. This is very beneficial if you don't have a roof readily accessible, or if there's any shading issues or shading from nearby trees or buildings. You can basically build solar offsite, and it won't have to affect the aesthetics of your house or your property. And this helps us foster a self-reliant community, bringing the community together and working with the utility company to help out as well. Here's a graph, basic solar 101. I'll explain the flow of electricity for you folks. Basically, the solar panels absorb the energy, the sun's energy, directly into the panels, and this will flow down wiring and to get to the inverter system, where it's converted to AC electricity that you use in your home. After the inverter, you can charge up your battery directly from the solar, and then it will go into your home through the electric panel. Whatever your home does not use directly from the PV system will be transferred through a bidirectional meter. So whatever you don't use will be sent back to the grid, and you'll be credited for the excess electricity, and basically be held in a solar bank that you can use at a later time or credit towards your electricity bill. Some technology that we use that has come a long way in the last couple of years is the use of basic string inverters, a string inverter with the power optimizer included, or a microinverter as well. So the string inverter was the original technology used, and you will have the panels strung together, and it'll collect the electricity and move down the line towards the string inverter, where it will be transferred into AC power, what you use in your home. The microinverters and the power optimizers are extremely similar functions. Basically, one of these devices will be installed on the underside of your panel, to where you won't be able to see the device at all, but they help to eliminate any shading issues that you may encounter. And basically, this acts as an individual panel rather than connected by a string. So this will allow us to do system level monitoring as well as individual panel monitoring, so we can read the functionality and the production of each individual panel as it talks to the monitoring device, and through an app on your phone or on your home computer, you can monitor all these devices. The power optimizer is extremely similar as it is on each individual panel as well. And then it's connected to a central inverter where it's converted at that level. You want to add in anything?
I'll add more later.
Okay. Yep. So as we get into new technologies throughout the industry as well, of course, the panels are the main source of electricity to convert everything. So panels, they're highly efficient, productive, and extremely durable to withstand any hail damage from the extreme storms that we get through Colorado. They have black on black panels for aesthetics, and you can also add in the integration of the solar skirt. In the top left picture here, we have the solar skirt at the base of the array. Basically, this helps block the wind and the snow load from getting up underneath the panels, but with the aesthetics as well, it helps the panels blend into your roof line a little bit, so it's a smooth transition between the panels and your roof. The next picture we have here is the use of Critter Guard. Basically, this mesh lining will be installed at the base of the array all the way around the perimeter to help keep out any squirrels, birds, any debris along those lines. And then we do have the use of the bifacial and semi-transparent modules that are available for awnings, solar carports, so you can charge your car underneath and use this as protection from any weather above your car as well. This also works great if you have any obscure roof lines directly on your roof. You can kind of install it off to the side of the house where you don't have to change the aesthetics of the house for the roof line.
I should also mention, I'm sure people are very interested in solar shingles and how those are advancing. We have seen some solar shingles in the city of Fort Collins. We have maintained a few of those projects on these homes. However, we haven't seen a whole lot of success yet. These solar shingles, they still need to be replaced or removed and reinstalled during an insurance claim. So it doesn't remove that need to do that. Additionally, these solar shingles, they're all in the string inverter setting. So they don't have power optimizers or microinverters integrated into them. So if one solar shingle were to go out in a whole string, then that whole string would not be producing solar energy. So these are kind of some of the struggles, is trying to integrate some of these solar shingles into the roofs. There's some innovative racking that are coming out, and we hope to present that next year in terms of more solutions that are related to solar shingles. Do inquire about them. They are unique for certain scenarios, but on a mass scale, probably won't be seeing that too often yet here soon.
All right. These are actually some of the panels that Sandbox does install regularly. On the left side, the Solaria panels. They're all black premium panels, very aesthetically pleasing, that blend in extremely well with your roof line. On the right side, absolutely nothing wrong with these panels at all. We just wanted to highlight the aesthetic differences between the two panels. The traditional panels have a slight blue film on top, and the white lines that run down the panels basically are the bus bars to transfer electricity throughout the panel. We just wanted to show new customers the new technology on how well the panels look on your roof, side-by-side picture to actually create a visual for you folks.
So I'm going to begin to describe some of the new technologies that some of the major manufacturers and players are coming out with. It's certainly not an exhaustive list, and there's a lot of great companies that I won't be able to touch on today, but I will just talk through SolarEdge, Enphase, and Generac, some of the leaders in the industry. And I'd be happy, if you want to chat offline about some technologies about some other major brands like SMA, happy to do so. SolarEdge, they're really innovating and trying to make a whole home solution is their strategy. And their strategy is all around what we discussed, the optimizers, and integrating that into their DC coupled solutions. So one thing you'll be seeing more of is the consumption monitoring. So nowadays you get a lot of production monitoring with your solar systems, so you can see how it produces throughout the whole day, but you lack the ability to actually see how much your refrigerators and your other appliances are using throughout the day. So it's great to include this into your packages because it's like having a dashboard while driving, where you can actually see not only how much your solar is producing, but how much your home is consuming. And then you can actually curtail your energy usage in your home. And you'll see that's a common theme across a lot of these different brands as well. SolarEdge is integrating smart EV charging directly into their inverters, which is really cool and unique. So some of these offerings include the ability to control your EV charging from the same app as your SolarEdge system. So literally your solar energy can go straight into your electric vehicle, which is really neat. Another major product they're coming out with is the backup interface. This kind of acts as the central hub to SolarEdge's new technology. It acts as almost like an auto transfer switch, meaning that it can back up your whole home or certain circuits of your home. It also allows the extra PV from your inverter to charge your batteries. So your batteries are DC energy and your solar is DC energy. And if your solar is rated at 8 kilowatts, but your inverter is at 7.5 kilowatts, then you have 500 watts left, which is typically clipped. And I'll explain this further, but that can charge up your battery directly so you don't lose any energy. And then they plan on coming up with smart devices throughout the home, smart thermostats, smart receptacles and whatnot. So there's a really long, exhaustive list that they're coming out with to make your whole home smart and energy efficient. So I was describing a little further the DC oversizing. So what this really means is with that potentially clipped and lost energy that you normally would have with a string inverter or optimized inverter system, no longer waste that clipped energy, and that clipped energy can go directly into the battery and bypass the inverter. So this will give you more production out of your systems and give you the ability to install larger systems on your smaller inverters. So on the left, you can see this on the graph, you can see on the left the production from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That extra curtailed clipped energy on the top of the peak of the curve is fed into the battery, whereas in the example on the right, that same AC coupled solution where that energy is lost due to the inverter clipping. Enphase, another great brand. They really focus on the microinverter solution, so more of an AC to AC solution. They've really advanced on their software side, and a lot of their technology can communicate with each other. What they're rolling out this year is the Encharge battery system. This is a whole home battery sized at either 3 kilowatt hours or 10 kilowatt hours, and these can be charged up from your microinverters. You have to have certain types of microinverters to work with these, and they do offer change outs. So ask your installer if you're eligible to change out your microinverters with the new IQ8s that are coming out that are compatible with this technology. And their interface is essentially that Npower smart switch that acts as the auto transfer switch and the brains in the hub towards the Enphase system. So that will if the lights go out from the grid, the Npower switch system will continue to operate with the microinverter solutions and the Encharge system so that your home continues to operate seamlessly without the grid. Here's a little wiring diagram, how the microinverters work. The microinverters are tied to the solar panels up on the left. That feeds into your Enphase combiner box, which then feeds into the Empower Smart Switch system, which can island the whole system by itself and turning off the grid, and allows it to communicate with your house, the Encharge battery, and your microinverter system, so that you don't lose power and your microinverters can continue to operate. Generac, which most of you probably recognize this big brand, they're mostly known for auto transfer switch and generator equipment, one of the leaders in that industry, and are applied everywhere. Now this company is really moving into the renewable energy space. They bought out Pika Energy, if anyone's familiar with Pika. Pika has been a quality inverter and battery system and now is underneath the Generac umbrella. Generac offers a storage solution where you can actually add on 3 kilowatt-hour batteries at a time. So you can really scale up and scale down your solution anywhere from, I think it's about 7 kilowatt-hours to an 18 kilowatt-hour system. Their central hub right now is the inverter. They do plan on integrating with their auto transfer switches and their Generac generators in the future. And they've been focusing heavily on their consumption monitoring and the production monitoring. So that's a common theme that you'll start to see. A lot of these companies are really coming out with the consumption monitoring, because you'll start to understand the importance. When you have a battery, you only have a limited capacity to charge your whole house. So knowing how much you're using is key and optimal for playing with time of use rates and off-grid systems. On a side note, I do prefer Generac for systems in the mountains. They're rated for the higher altitudes, and their generators are often already installed in those mountain houses. So that's one key trait that I like about Generac. As you can see, there's a lot of different battery storage systems out there. Back to what I mean about AC coupled systems. AC coupled systems means you have a solar panels that have its inverter and a battery that has its own inverter. So you have 2 inverters for your solution. This can sometimes be the best solution if you're adding a separate system to your already existing solar energy system, such as a Tesla Powerwall. But there are systems, if you plan it right, you can get a DC coupled solution where you only have one inverter that is the brains and the minds of the solar and the battery, which can feed your whole solution. So sometimes it's most cost effective when planning ahead to plan for a DC coupled solution to maximize efficiencies.
This also brings us to electric vehicles, charging and integrating those technologies to have the EV charger directly in the inverter as well. So you can have your solar array strictly power or directly power your EV when you're trying to charge it while you're staying at home during the day. And then you can have your battery charge the EV overnight without pulling from the grid at all. As many of you know, the industry is slowly transitioning over to EVs, and most of the larger brands are coming out with EVs. And we've seen some studies that have suggested that EVs will outsell traditional gas-powered cars by 2040 is a rough estimate, but they are transitioning to the future of the auto industry. We have done work with solar carports, whether it be on a residential or small commercial side, to where there are EV chargers directly into the framework of the carport, so you can park underneath and be shielded from any weather, anything like that, and charge your car. So I know there's a lot of charging stations around town and a lot around Colorado in general, but this comes with the panels directly on top for you as well. Also, another transition has been the utility rate schedule. We have seen in Fort Collins specifically the entire utility transition to the time of use rates, which means right here is an example directly from the utility's website. Between May and September, they're labeled as the summer hours, of course. So between 2 and 7 p.m., you can see on this graph that the rates are about a little over 3 times as expensive as they are during the off-peak hours. So with this in mind, we've been designing residential projects to offset those afternoon rates. Basically, as everybody knows, due south is prime location for solar panels. You get the most sunlight throughout the entire day, but we've tried to integrate due south and then slightly southwest as well. So as the sun transitions through the sky, you can capture some of those afternoon hours for sunlight to escape some of those higher utility rates. We have seen this fully happen in Fort Collins, and we know after talking with some of the major utility providers around the northern Colorado area, we've heard that everybody is trying to transition over the next 5 to 10 years. So we're trying to plan for the future to help everybody save some money, and then so to get the prime location for your panels to plan for the future, basically. Along those lines, there are several federal incentives in place for solar for the next couple of years. Up until 2019, it had been at 30% of the entire project cost that you get back in a federal tax credit. 2020 has been the first year that we've seen that percentage decrease a little bit. As you can see, 2021, it is rated at 22% throughout that calendar year. And then as we get into the 2022 year, it drops off completely down to 0 for the residential sector. And then you can still install solar during the 2022 year at 10% for commercial and utility scale projects. I will let you know that these projects do need to be placed in service before the end of that calendar year to qualify for those incentives. So we definitely suggest to get your projects started early. As many of you know, that these are construction projects, and permitting and installation, everything could take a little while. So we definitely recommend getting your project started early. For local incentives, there are local incentives throughout Colorado. Colorado utility companies are mandated to offer the net metering incentives. So the graph off to your right is basic rundown of net metering. So energy will be collected from the solar panels and converted through the inverter. That electricity will be used directly in your house to offset any of your usage needs. And then whatever excess energy is still left over, it will be sent through a bidirectional meter, meaning as you push energy onto the grid, you will be given a credit for the excess electricity that your panels produce. And then as the sun goes down at the end of the day, you can use that electricity, that credit basically, so you'll be credited for that. Use your credit instead of pulling directly from the grid. And this is basically for the billing system for your utilities. Along those lines as well, the city of Fort Collins offers the Fort Collins Cash Grant. So it's up to 50% or 50 cents per watt, or up to $1,500 total, depending on the size of your array. And as I mentioned earlier, these incentives will definitely help increase the value in your home, whether you're looking to sell the array with your house as well.
So we'll touch on our research in partnership with Colorado State University. Back in 2008, we began doing the unthinkable and growing crops underneath solar panels. And we did this by growing spinach underneath bifacial solar panels, which have about 5% transparency. And we got incredible growth underneath that. And we turned that into a pilot research, which turned that into a USDA funded Small Business Innovative Research Grant, where we deployed 9 pole mount solar arrays at the CSU RDEC facility, which is east of the Budweiser plant. And we had huge success growing various types of specialty crops underneath various types of transparent solar panels. Agrivoltaics directly solves the food energy water nexus by growing our food locally, producing our energy locally near demand and supply, and then doing this with a reduced water necessary to complete those tasks. Agrivoltaics is a huge opportunity to do this locally. The theory behind agrivoltaics is you're essentially doubling up on the resource per acre. So even though we have struggling farms that operate locally with increased land prices, it's equally difficult to install solar by itself on these high price values of real estate. So by combining the two, we can increase the value of the resource to be able to sustain itself within our communities. Here are the types of panels that we researched. On the left is your traditional opaque panel. In the middle is the 5% transparent bifacial panel. And on the right is a 40% transparent cadmium telluride panel. So of course, we actually found that we got increased yield of certain crops underneath the 40% transparent panel. And there's a unique microclimate underneath these panels that allow enough sunlight through to grow the crops, but also reduce the overall water evaporation, reduce the high intensity temperatures that these crops experience throughout the summer, and gives an optimal condition for these crops to grow in a field setting. So I'll just finish off that slide actually by saying we are submitting for our phase 2 round of funding, and a lot of our revenue goes towards this research. And we hope to be deploying this in northern Colorado within the next 2 years to concepts, to local farmers and local utilities in order to deploy these resources near the high demand areas.
So I wanted to speak about some of the best practices throughout the solar industry and residential projects, all of which Sandbox practices. So basically, we're an innovative company progressing for the future of the solar industry between agrivoltaics and using the best quality products, tier 1 panels, so the highest quality and productivity, efficiency, and durability that the industry offers at the moment. As we spoke about earlier, quality design, trying to plan for the future in those time of use rates, as well as keeping in mind the aesthetics of your property. We can paint conduit to make it blend in with the side of the house, and then of course run conduit through the attic if that's available as well, to give you a nice clean, crisp finish for the array. Keep your house looking excellent as well, and completely sustainable as well. With the array production monitoring and consumption monitoring, we can keep up to real time at these levels to kind of be self-aware of how much electricity you're producing and how much you're using, to kind of help save the environment and save your wallet a little bit as well, and keep your system functioning properly throughout the lifetime of the system. And the quality of installation, when we install everything in-house, we rely heavily on the expertise and training of our crews to make sure everything runs properly, makes it look excellent as well. And then long after the system has been installed, we continue to monitor everything to make sure the system is running properly for you well after the installation. Now we're going to transition over to the Q&A session. If there's any questions that you guys would like us to address.
Well, Justin and Ian, thanks so much for a great presentation. We have several questions, a lot of good ones. Let's start off with, has the durability of inverters improved? You know, in my first PV system, they were warranted to 10 years and sometimes died sooner. So how is that durability and life cycle looking?
So most of the inverters that we use now, we install solar edge technology, so they're top of the line for the inverter throughout the industry. They come with a 12-year product warranty to start off. Of course, this is extendable up to 28, 25 years if you'd like. Typically, obviously that is there for peace of mind, but a lot of customers don't go this route simply because the inverter technology has increased exponentially and the prices have been decreasing as well. So throughout the 12 years that they're rated for currently, the failure rate has definitely dropped exponentially as well. So the durability of the inverters has definitely increased for you folks.
Okay, and here's a pretty good follow-up question. Has the high cost for the emergency power shutoff as demanded by fire code come down? And I know sometimes that can be relative to local conditions, but your thoughts on that as well.
So yeah, the rapid shutdown requirement, that is now resolved in a lot of these microinverter and optimizer solutions. So it's all integrated into the system and into the inverter. So there's no need for the additional equipment for a whole rapid shutdown. So a lot of that has been addressed by these manufacturers and does not add significant cost no longer.
Okay, and going on, I mean, these are great questions. I'm just going from one to the next. What is, talk about the process of installing PV on metal roofs. Are only standing seam roofs suitable? And then also it added about the flexible solar panels, the thin film adhesive ones, I believe.
So PV can definitely be installed on metal roofs. We simply use a different racking material to secure the panels for the snow and wind load. That's not a problem at all. Obviously, orientation, pitch, everything comes into each individual project. So we can definitely take a look at that and find the best solution for you. And then as far as, sorry, Pete, what was the second part of the question?
It was, you know, the flexible PV modules that could be rolled out. There were several projects I remember seeing where you'd have about a 15 to 20 foot long, technically a panel that would have adhesive and it would sit between the standing seams.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if anyone's doing that anymore.
I was going to say we've definitely seen a good amount of those projects, but along the same lines as the solar shingles, the technology and durability isn't exactly there yet. They're still making advancements for this technology, but if any portion of that thin film were to get damaged, it would be pretty difficult to remove just one section, if at all. So it might be a full removal of the entire project completely. It gets pretty expensive, and we've seen solar PV, just regular modules, be much more productive and efficient for you as well.
I will add quickly back to the attachments on metal roofs. So oftentimes we see a lot of corrugated metal roofs or trapezoidal. So those you can attach these feet that have like an adhesive butyl underneath, which cover the penetrations that go into the roof. We've been doing this for 5 years and not seen any leaks or damages, and we warranty all our work. And all the equipment is made by S5 and other manufacturers that are used to working with these metal roofs as well.
Great. Okay, here's a good one. Do any of these solutions include load management to allow low priority loads to be toggled off when the solar plus storage energy is scarce during grid outages? So kind of an off-grid or backup, emergency backup load management.
Absolutely. That's in the long-term vision of a lot of these products. Those interfaces that you saw, the Solar Edge interface, the Generac's interface, they're coming out the consumption monitoring first, but these smart controls will definitely be integrated into their solutions. So right now there's some other workarounds, or you can, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but there's some other solutions that can curtail those loads and tell you how much those loads are being installed at this moment. So there are some solutions out there where you can actively monitor and curtail your load usage in a grid outage.
And I could throw out a possible source for additional information on that. Might be, I'm just making sure I have the website right. Yep, otherpower.com, which is Dan Fink, who lives up in the Buckhorn Canyon. He's been a long time off-grid guy. I'm sure he has some tricks in some of his material to manage that. Okay, oh yeah. Oh man, lots of questions came up. Regarding the solar ITC, good advice on getting projects on the road. I guess the first, okay, that's more of a statement. Basically, if you snooze, you lose was the statement there.
Yeah.
Just to touch on that a little bit. So we typically quote between contract signing and end of the entire installation at roughly 90 days. So everybody can keep that in mind. And of course, everybody does kind of rush in the same boat at the end of the year to where everybody panics a little bit to try to get their project in on time. We definitely saw an influx of projects coming in towards the end of August, September, to where it was very busy end of the year, let's just say. So we definitely recommend getting them in a little bit earlier. But yeah, from start to finish, roughly about 90 days for the entire project. But there are inspections that need to be completed after the installation by rather the state or the utility company. So those could tend to take a little bit longer beyond the installation. But to qualify, it has to be, the system has to be placed in service before the calendar year. So yeah, we definitely recommend reaching out soon. It's a great time. We can get you in towards the end of the summer at this point and collecting some of that summer sunshine.
Okay, and here's a really good, kind of an in-depth question. Can you talk about how solar generation, being the actual production data from your installs, is shared among you, the developer, the customer, and the utility? And here's, for example, what data is collected. Is the data stored on site or managed in the cloud? Can the inverter, be quote unquote interrogated to download data? And is it real time or not?
Yeah, there's a lot to that. So there's certain, each inverter company has their own privacy policies. But from a general overview, the homeowner has access to their own monitoring. The inverter company will have access to that monitoring so they can troubleshoot any problems. And then the solar company will have access to that monitoring as well to troubleshoot any problems. So that usually is more of a proactive thing than sharing usage or anything like that. The utility company does not have access to that, to the inverter monitoring at this time unless specifically requested from the customer. What the utility company does have access to is their meters and smart meters to read the bidirectional production of the solar and the usage of the home. So that's as far as my knowledge goes in regards to privacy policies. That would be between the inverter company and the homeowner.
Well, it almost raises the question of will smart inverters be able to open themselves almost as a smart meter in their own right?
Yeah, they are definitely making them so they're revenue grade meters. A lot of companies too will be offering financial solutions such as power purchase agreements which we didn't really get into much this seminar, but be happy to touch on another one. But essentially, you'd be financed a solution through the power produced, and the inverter would be able to tell you how much the home is producing and using, and be able to bill you accordingly based off of that, giving you a net savings eventually.
Okay, great. Well, here's a more futuristic question. When will quantum dot photovoltaic be real?
I don't have an answer to that.
Maybe we'll have to get some NREL folks on talk about advanced PV technology, but all I'm reading about now is the perovskite stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of perovskite, but I will say, just like general knowledge of commercialization grants, it's very difficult to scale up manufacturing of any sort of new PV cell technology to a point where it's cost effective enough to deploy it cost effectively across the world. It's just really hard to do to get that level of demand and interest, to be able to get the resources and the manufacturing facilities up to production to be on a competitive level of today's silicon cells and cadmium telluride cells. But I hope someday soon we'll get there. I think there'll be a lot of niche technology, kind of like what we're diving into, the agrivoltaics. There's certain cells that have even transparency on certain spectrums of light, and those may have particular applications either towards building integrated photovoltaics or agrivoltaics, or these specific niches that start to bring out and be able to deploy solar energy to specific demands of energy. So you can locate strategically these energy resources near the high demand areas.
Well, great. Here's the next one. Can you provide the advantages, and I would say the disadvantages, of the 3 different types of inverters? Why use one over the other?
So basically, with the microinverters and the power optimizers, they're very similar in functionality, price, efficiency. Obviously, there are some advantages towards scalability and expanding. For the power optimizers, they're a little bit more scalable for the commercial sector, but then vice versa. The way that the microinverters are strung together, they're basically act as more of an individual, so you can easily add on panels for future expansion of your array. Between efficiency of those 2 products, it's a minuscule amount, so it doesn't really affect one way or another, whichever way you set it up. Obviously, these products are paired with other products such as the battery storage system as well. So basically, it leans in which, basically the overview of your entire system, what the purpose of your system is, and which products you'd like to use. They're very similar in functionality, though. You can't go wrong with either one. And for the normal string inverters, I would say these are more used towards wide open roof spaces for an easy layout with no shading issues or anything. That definitely offers more cost-effective option for you, such as a ground mount system. That's basically the basic technology and very straightforward for you. And yep, that's the original technology that we have that was used in residential products. But with the use of microinverters and the power optimizers, we can get around a lot of the issues for shading and functionality, to where with the power optimizers and microinverters, say if one individual panel would go down, we could see individually which panel that is, so we could try to troubleshoot it or switch out a panel for you if needed. But while that takes place, these 2 types of technology, basically the other system, the other panels, will kick into a higher gear and try to make up for some of the losses and not take the entire string down entirely. So your system will keep up and running while that one panel needs to be attended to.
Okay, sounds great. Oh, sorry. I'm not sure on that. Hold on one second here. Is the federal investment tax credit available if someone buys shares in a community solar farm? And I actually can answer that if you guys want to, because I'm in the solar farm here.
Yeah, go for it, Peter.
And the answer is yes. And so the questions keep coming, so I'm just trying to get through these. Have you guys done any solar thermal where it assists? I think I'm reading this right. A solar thermal rooftop system that assists a heat pump driven hot water heater? Or do you know of anyone who's tried to do that?
We have not done any of those projects. No, we can definitely take a look to try to find out more solutions for you. Sandbox personally has not, though.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting, it's an interesting approach. I think if you were going to put flat plate on your roof or evacuated tubes, you might have a complete, go with that system where the PV and electric's backing up just a standard solar thermal tank. How much additional cost per watt installed does a battery backup system typically add on average?
So battery technology right now has, of course, been increasing and the prices have been decreasing. For a lot of the systems that we work with right now, they have to be paired with storage-ready inverters. And then, of course, these new hubs that are coming out will have the storage-ready inverter, and the battery backup capability is already included in them. Some of those technologies are not on the market as of right now, but they're right around the corner. For the Enphase and Generac, as well as the Solar Edge technologies, we've been attending webinars and doing our research as well, talking to representatives from each company. It looks like they're right around the corner. They're projected towards the end of 2020 and early to mid 2021. But at the moment, the LG Chem batteries that we typically install, they are a 10 kilowatt hour battery for an entire home battery backup with critical loads backed up as well. We're looking at about $8,600 fully installed with all the correct components, basically right out of the box, ready to go.
I will add too, the investment tax credit you can claim on the battery if it is directly charged by the solar. Now that definition is a little bit vague. You're 100% going to get it if you have a DC coupled system. Where it gets tricky is where you have AC coupled systems and that definition. So you'd have to regard your accountant for that scenario. But that's where the advantage of DC coupled systems also come in, is you can take the tax credit from the procurement of your battery.
Yeah, here's a really interesting one, and again, a little bit complex. It's talking about the impacts of shading on generation, and relative to the benefit that having shading, particularly trees, reduces your AC load, but also would reduce PV generation. How do you guys kind of balance that, those two? Or do you know of an economic payoff relative to one versus the other?
Yeah, there's interesting studies out there, but it also depends on the type of cooling that is used in the house. Some people use air conditioning, there's fans, and there's multiple ways of going about it. Typically, luckily, we don't have to make that decision very often of cutting down a tree versus putting PV panels. I think Justin would agree that we try to avoid any type of tree cutting as much as possible, because of the natural benefit that trees do provide our homes and the natural cooling. There are some interesting papers that we'd be happy to send out in regards to that subject. But I'd say, luckily, a lot of the optimizers and microinverter solutions help negate the necessity and need to cut limbs.
Oh, great. And this is also, you know, the case for community solar. You got great shading, you know,
Exactly.
get into that. Okay, so you showed 3 panels you're testing with your agrivoltaic project. What is the, it says WH, is that watt hour degradation of the 40% transparent versus the thin solar efficiency? I think I'm reading that right.
Sounds like the question is efficiency. So the cadmium telluride panels are roughly about 14–15% efficient, whereas silicon panels are about 20%-ish efficient, depending on which silicon module. So there's a reduction in efficiencies of the PV generation, but there's maximized efficiencies of the crop generation. So kind of counterbalances when you combine the 2 resources.
Okay, so jumping back to kind of the whole home backup, when the grid goes down, does the system cut in fast enough to avoid devices shutting down? There, the example as a home computer. I think most of us sit on a laptop with a battery, but not everyone. But is it fast enough to avoid a shutdown on devices?
With the new battery technology and inverter technology combined, there are safety mechanisms put in place to where you won't see any interruption at all, basically, not even a flicker of the lights with some of the technologies out there. We have had customers that have been in the IT sector that strictly work from home and use a great capacity directly from their computers. And that is their one main objective to basically getting battery backup, is so that there's no interruption at all. And the answer to that is yes, there is technology out there to prevent any interruption at all. So it'll basically seamlessly switch over for you. It's a matter of milliseconds. So basically can't even tell the difference when the grid goes down and the backup system kicks in.
That's great. Don't even need to reset your clock.
Yeah.
Okay, so jumping on, can you say a bit more about the economics of combining PV and agriculture?
It's a generalized question, but can I ask this person to be a little more specific?
Whoever typed that question, do you mind following up, and we'll jump on to back to kind of pricing. What's the forward price curve for solar? Will solar prices drop 20% by 2022 to offset the loss of the tax credits in specific?
Yeah, the major advancements in the cost reductions are really going to come from the permitting side. So a lot of the holdup on costs of solar has been the labor involved in the paperwork, the permitting, the inspections, and completing projects bureaucratically. So the NREL laboratory is actually coming out with a standard web application for these jurisdictions to take hold of, which will turn around permits from 3 to 4 weeks down to 1 day. So that will dramatically decrease costs to the consumer and have projects turn around a lot faster. So that's really going to be some of the main drivers in cost decreases over the coming years. Also, from an installation perspective, there's new equipment that is reducing our installs from 2 days down to 1 day. So these cost drivers for residential solar will ideally flow down with the tax credits, but it's remained to be seen how quickly that will occur and how fast the technology will adopt. So I encourage everyone to tell their lawmakers to streamline the tax credit even further, especially since we were hit with tariffs. So,
well, I guess I'll just follow up on that one because we have one other questions left, and then we can kind of, if we want to open it up a little bit more, it comes back to kind of balance of system costs, where once the panels were the biggest cost, now balance of system, I believe, is the most expensive single cost. And of that, what does the permitting, is the permitting getting bigger and bigger relative to everything else as the other ones get smaller?
sorry, say that one more time, Peter.
In terms of the balance of costs or balance of system cost, which with panels getting cheaper, the balance of system costs have become, I think, more than 50%. And permitting is a big chunk of that seems to be fixed. Obviously, with the permitting being able, if we can deal with that, are there other balance of system costs that can come down, or is permitting really the big opportunity to make things more affordable?
Permitting is definitely the biggest opportunity to reduce it. Labor is another big one, and that will come with advancements in ease of installation and efficiencies and workforce development and software development. So those are kind of the huge balance of system costs that we can do on our end as an installer to keep driving costs down.
Okay, well, down to the last question, and I apologize if I did skip any. And this, you did kind of mention this earlier, but how would you assess the viability of integrated roof tiles like the Tesla ones, especially when you get into situations where aesthetics are really optimal and individuals find the PV panels to be, even the nice ones, to be quite ugly?
Yeah, you really have to evaluate these projects when you're putting on new shingles and a new roof. That's the most opportune time for solar shingles, and pretty much the only time to really install them, because you need to sheath properly around them to ensure that the aesthetics are there and the functionality of the shingles are there, and you don't get any leakage. In terms of evaluation, it'd just be a cost evaluation and a shading analysis, typically like a normal solar analysis, except we use the string inverters and the solar shingles. And ideally, it'd be a south-facing roof with plenty of sun exposure, which would pay off the system. And then you could potentially, depending on the setup, if it's tiles, then it's more likely that you don't have to replace the shingles at another point, or they're easier to replace. But the ones that are like composition shingle integrated currently are not as easily attractive to maintain their life expectancy and financial payback.
Okay, here's an interesting question that I think I accidentally skipped over earlier. Have you or your customers seen inverters that say panel production is 4 to 9% more than what the utility says the panels are producing, or I guess your meter? Have you ever seen discrepancies between internal production data and what is coming back on the bill?
We've never seen exact percentage differences, but certainly there's discrepancies just based off of the way it's monitored. So the meters are monitored through integrated CTs in our revenue grade. versus the inverter has its own internal CTs that are typically not revenue grade. So there'll be a slight difference in the way they read energy. So it's, I don't know if it's 5% oftentimes, but I know it won't line up exactly.
Okay, well, I think I have everything covered. Again, if I did miss your question, I apologize. If you do want to retype it here, we'll hang on for just a second. Otherwise, I think we can go ahead and wrap this up here in a minute. But definitely want to thank you all again, Ian and Justin with Sandbox Solar. Thanks everyone for being on the call. Yep, and there's their information. This will be recorded, so once it's recorded, an email will go out. But if you wish to get a hold of them, go ahead and write their information down. And remember that on June 10th, we've got the CPACE Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy presentation webinar from the Boulder chapter. That'll be 7 p.m. on June the 10th.
Thanks a lot, Peter. Thanks for having us. Thanks for everybody for joining.
Oh, hold on one second. We did get another 2 questions here really quickly. A question on to sort of the rating of the system. When you say, somebody has a 5 kilowatt system and don't know if that's 5 kilowatt per hour, per day, per month, and what the average home consumes and how many panels are required to achieve. Well, let me read this question again. I apologize. I guess it gets down to how do you size a system starting from consumption right and moving up to the size of the panels in kilowatts?
Yeah, so obviously consumption is the first driving factor when looking at sizing an array. Beyond that, we'll take a look at any shading issues, roof tilt orientation, just basic house design along those lines. The technology that we use, it can determine the height and shapes of nearby trees and buildings to determine any shading, everything like that. So of course we pick the prime location to place panels, and of course depending on those locations, that'll determine how many panels we need to offset your consumption. And when we do start the quoting process, we try to offset 100% of your utility consumption throughout the year. As a starting point, in Colorado, we are allowed to design up to 120% of your annual consumption. So basically, it depends on the customer's needs and wants for the project. And then, of course, there's some other factors in there as well as budget, things like that. But feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to put together a free estimate for you and go over any details that you folks would like. And then the next step beyond that would be to conduct a free home visit as well. We can talk to you in person and take a closer look at the property to make sure we didn't miss anything in our design software, and then go over several details of the project with you as well.
Okay, and then there is one last question, and it's simple though. What percentage of systems are solar plus storage, and they were being specific, solar plus storage microgrids versus just solar?
As the technology gets better and the prices decrease for the storage options, we've definitely seen a spike in interest for the projects, especially with the new time of use rates in Fort Collins, what we regularly work with in the local area, of course. A lot of customers are trying to get solar storage capabilities in order to offset some of those peak demands. But for a rough number, I would say probably 15-20% during our first conversation, people asked about solar storage capabilities. So that has definitely increased over the past couple of years as the technology increases as well. The solar storage technology has come a long way, and it definitely keeps improving. And it only makes sense with peak rates increasing and everything like that. There's definitely benefits of the storage, and I know the grid along the Front Range is very dependable, so the grid doesn't go down often, but of course everybody has their own needs to protect their home and make sure that they have electricity at all times. So yeah, we definitely encourage the solar storage capabilities.
Okay, well, thanks again, Ian and Justin, for a great presentation, and thank you all for joining us. Everyone have a great evening.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, everyone.